Good afternoon. This is Jeff, and we are live. I just wanted to do a quick audio video test. Thanks for coming a few minutes early. We will start in about 10 minutes, but if you could type in the chat box, if you can hear me okay, see me okay, I would really appreciate it. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. We are about 7 minutes early, so I'm going to give people a few minutes to join. Good time to grab some water, coffee, soda. If you're on the East Coast, Cabernet, Pinot, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome to the online session, your superhero job search. I'm excited to get started. We're going to give people about 5 minutes. We're a few minutes early. In the meantime, grab water or something more strong. And if you can hear me okay, type in the chat box where you're dialing in from. So I always love to know what city, what state, what country you may be coming from, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. We are live. It is about 3 minutes before the hour. People are still getting into the online room. We had over 1,000 registrations, so I want to give people a few minutes, but the list of attendees is great. Chicago suburbs, of course, my hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina, Frisco, Texas, all over, New York, Florida, California. It's a long, long list. People are still joining, so we're going to start right on time. It's not too late for you to invite a friend. If there's anyone that is even thinking about looking for a job, send him a text, give him the login information, and they're more than welcome to join. I will take all the comers that want to get this information. So let's start in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to do one last audio and video check, if you don't mind. I made some adjustments to the mic based on some feedback that I got at the last session. So if you could just type in the chat box, if you can hear me okay, see me okay, and then we will get started in just about 2 minutes. Okay, sounds like everyone can hear me and see me. Terrific. Here we go. We got a lot to cover, Don't worry if you don't get it all down. I'm going to send you the information kind of summarized so that it's actionable. But I hope you're going to pay attention, because by the end of this session, in the next hour, we're going to cover some cracking stuff. I call this the superhero job search because it's all about impact, right? It's all about, can we overcome this very, very significant obstacle that's right in front of us? And by the end of this hour, you'll be able to do that. So you're in the right place if you are actively looking for your next role. You're also in the right place if you're not looking right now, but maybe you're worried about your company's stability. And so you're starting to think about looking. And you want more confidence in kind of how to go about this job search. I can tell you with every bone in my body that this will be unlike any other job search you've ever done. So you're in the right place, because I'm going to give it to you straight. Those of you that know me know that I don't pull any punches. There's going to be no BS here. My goal is not to be a cheerleader and provide a rah-rah session. My goal is to make sure that you leave here well equipped, knowing exactly what it is you need to do. And by the end, I'll give you my contact info, so you can certainly reach out to me if you have any questions. But again, you're in the right place. It is the superhero job search. And I named it that, frankly, because this job search has to be fast, right? If you're going to go out and look for something, you've got to be fast. I'm going to make you seem more powerful than you could even imagine, and you're going to leap tall buildings, right? This healthcare crisis and this economic crisis are probably the tallest obstacle any of us are ever going to face in our entire career. It's right here. It's right in front of us. And I want to make sure that you're able to leap to the other side. And that's why I named it the Superhero Job Search. So type in the chat box, yes, if that would be useful for you. If you'd like to get that kind of information and if you think it would be helpful, just type yes. And if I get enough yeses, we're going to get started. So I'm excited. I'm humbled by how many people are joining. They're still kind of getting into the online room, but we're still going to start right on time. But type in the chat box if you would, and give me a shout out and let me know that you want to get started. Okay, so let's do it. I have no doubt that you can do this. I have seen over the course of my career so many people do this and use this kind of information. And by the way, people that, frankly, between us, were less talented than you, less confident than you, less skilled than you, less educated than you, and they still did it. Unfortunately, the way most people go about this is entirely wrong. Most people go about this entirely the wrong way. And so it takes a very different approach. And that's what I'm going to share with you over the next hour. 60 seconds on me, just so you understand the perspective that I'm bringing to this. I've been a headhunter for 25 years now. Was actually named the matchmaker by Inc. magazine. And more importantly, I've led 4 companies. And so I've been a CEO. I understand what is in the mind of the hiring manager that we're going to be chasing down. I've hired over 3,000 people at my companies and for my clients, and I've interviewed over 30,000 people. So I've seen this movie before. Obviously, haven't seen any economic environment like this before, but I've seen some pretty significant challenges, and I've seen what sets people apart. When I'm not teaching this stuff and when I'm not doing executive search for my clients, I'm a professor at the Kellogg School of Management right here in Chicago, and I teach a course on recruiting and retaining talent. Also last year, was able to publish a book called Recruit Rockstars based on the course I teach at Kellogg, and it went on to become a bestseller. So, you know, we all have our thing. This is my thing. I hope that what I'll share with you will be useful when you're on the other side looking for your next opportunity. So what I want to take you through is step by step how to find your next role. I'm going to share with you exactly where the opportunities are, and there are plenty of them. There are industries that need you right now, despite what you may be hearing and thinking. But at the same time, I'm going to be very candid and share with you the biggest mistakes that people make. And of course, one of those is the LinkedIn profile. I can't emphasize enough, if you're in the US and if you're in the business world, how important your LinkedIn profile is. And so we're going to talk about how to make over that profile. So that's what we're going to cover in the next hour. After that, I'm going to stay as long as you want for questions. So this is a live session. I can prove it to you by telling you that it is Wednesday, April 1st. The stock market was down 990 points today. So this is live. It's as live as it gets. And I'll stay on for Q&A into the evening. I got nothing else to do. And unfortunately, I have no place else to go. Our world has changed overnight. Now, I don't need to tell you that. You know that. But you may not yet be thinking about, okay, well, how does that impact all these businesses? And how does that impact the job search? And so that's my goal, is to connect the dots. We are in a health crisis. Fortunately, I'm feeling okay, despite that dry cough, which I can assure you is just a dry cough. So I am going to be drinking some water. But the health crisis has caused, rightfully so, our government to essentially shut down economic activity in this country for many, many companies in many sectors. Not all, but many. And so that is what's causing now this economic crisis, these two things at the same time. And the economic crisis is really just getting started. We've seen hotels, airlines, casinos, restaurants, bars, all your neighborhood laundromats, everything either shut down or just about shut down. And I wish I could tell you that that's where it's going to stop, but it's not. Because what happens if you haven't been through an economic cycle like this before, this will be my fourth, and I guess that's the only benefit of being old, is that there's a cascading effect, right? There is a domino effect. As consumers are laid off, worry about their job, hunker down, they stop spending money, less money into the economy. As businesses then have trouble selling, they start to reduce their spending, right? Look at the whole sports industry is effectively shut down right now. And so we're just now starting to see the domino effect fall. The good or bad news is, unfortunately, the bad news from a health crisis standpoint, this month is going to be pretty rough. And I think we're all braced for that. But the economic cycle is going to play out. It's going to take more than a month. Those dominoes take a while to fall. It could be a month, 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. I don't know any better than you do, but it will cascade far beyond the time period of the health crisis. Some forecasts, Stephen Mnuchin, who's our Treasury Secretary, says that unemployment could hit 20%. That's almost as high as the Great Depression. Yesterday, St. Louis Fed released a study saying it could be 35%. Again, no one knows, but it's safe to assume that in 20 days, we've gone from the tightest labor market we've ever seen in 50 years to potentially a disastrous employment situation. And my goal over the next hour is to help you navigate that and not be that last domino, not be caught flat-footed. You don't want to be that last person who wakes up and says, things have changed. Now, believe it or not, there's plenty of people who haven't yet thought through all those implications. That's what my clients pay me to do, is think through all those implications. And so I'm going to share that with you. This is really no different than a tsunami that's about to hit us. Again, the healthcare crisis has already started to hit us, especially in New York and Chicago and other places, but the economic impact is just behind it. And that's what's going to come next. I promised you no BS. I promised you I'd be straight. And I say this not to alarm you. I say this not to depress you. I say this because now's the time for clear thinking, to have a plan, and to tackle it. Tackle what's right in front of our face. And there's no reason you can't do it. I've seen far less talented people do it. The people that get washed out are the ones who don't take action or have a poor plan. And I won't let that happen to you. You can certainly hide. You can put your head in the sand, or you can win. You actually can win. Now, we have to be realistic about what the word win means in this context. I'm not going to, by the end of the webinar, promise you the dream job. I'm not going to tell you that you can go out, switch industries, switch companies, switch job titles, get promoted and take 30% more money. Probably not going to happen. But if you set your expectations appropriately and just suck less than everybody else, you can win. And so part of it is the mindset. This is a big mindset game. Now, again, I mentioned I'm old, so I've been through 3 of these. Not anything like this one, of course, but they're all different in a lot of ways. One was right when I was coming out of school, when I went to undergrad. One was the dot-com recession, and I lived right in Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley. So I saw the epicenter of that economic disaster. And then, of course, 2008. Now, I want to do one video and audio check just to make sure. A couple of people said I froze. And a couple of people said they can't hear me. So I just want to do one last check before we get going. And if you could type in the chat box, if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, I just want to make sure. And then we're going to keep rolling. Okay. Yep. Everyone's saying you're good. Wow. Fantastic. Good. Okay. So let's roll. Look, there is always opportunity. Always. Just in the past few weeks, these are just a few data points. Goya Foods, their revenue, their volume has gone up 4 times this month. Amwell, which is one of the leading telehealth companies, telemedicine companies, their volume, their revenue up 20 times in the past month. Unbelievable. Walmart stock is at an all-time high. So anyone who tells you that it's all decimated, that the end of the world is happening, what I'll remind you is that there's always opportunity. I'm not asking you to suspend reality, but I am asking you to always look for that opportunity. The way I think about this is, and I've seen this before in 3 previous recessions, is what I call value migration. The jobs don't all disappear, but they do move from one place to another. There is a from and a to. There are industries and sectors and types of roles that seem to disappear overnight. You know, if you're the quarterback of an NFL team right now, you don't really have a job, even though you're probably still getting paid. And other companies and sectors and jobs are booming. Our job is to connect those two. And that's what I want to help you do over the course of this hour. You absolutely must keep your calm about you. You've got to have a plan. You cannot panic. And you got to prepare for the storm, prepare for that tsunami that is coming. A lot of people will not do it. And if you can do it, you're going to be 5 steps, 10 steps ahead. So here are some of the biggest mistakes I see people make every time during these recessions. First of all, they panic. They worry about things that they have no control over. I'm just as concerned about the health crisis that our nation is facing. I'm doing all the right things, haven't left my house in 3 weeks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm doing what I can control and let the rest go. Whether it's yoga or meditation or wine or sleep or whatever it is, spending time with your kids, panic is not going to get you anywhere. Also, having no plan is not going to get you anywhere. By the end of this call, you're going to have a plan. And if you don't feel you have a plan, I want you to send me an email and I will make sure you get a plan, because that's what's necessary to survive. Another mistake I see people make in these recessions is moving from one company to another company in the same industry, an industry that has the same issues. And what will often happen is you go from company A to company B, same issues follow you, and 2 months later, you're looking for a job again, or that company runs out of money. Maybe they had a slightly stronger balance sheet, but it doesn't last that long. So that can be a very common mistake, as is taking a role without doing your due diligence. And we'll walk through what that looks like. Another big mistake people make in a recession is holding out for the perfect situation. Now, 20 days ago, as a headhunter, I would talk with candidates, executives all day long who were holding out for the perfect situation. And I would tell them, you should hold out for the perfect situation. And you know what? If you pass on this opportunity, you'll probably have another one in 3 days. I had executives that had 4 offers in a week. Those days are ancient history. It's 20 days ago. The faster you can shut that door and accept this new reality, the better off you're going to be, and not hold out for the perfect situation. Another mistake people make is not taking action. They focus on things that don't matter. They spend hours trying to get their resume perfect. And I want to grab them by the throat and say, get going. Your resume is not going to make the difference. And then, of course, the last mistake is people that just wait and see. I'm going to wait and see. I think, President Trump has said by the end of April, we're all going to leave our homes. We're going to have a big celebration. And that sounds great. And if you're willing to bet that that's right, and that as soon as the virus has peaked, that the economic recovery is going to be a V shape, then waiting and seeing is a pretty good strategy. But if you're wrong, you are screwed, because you've lost probably your most critical month, right? We are here at April 1st. You've lost the month of April, probably the crucial month to make a change or start to plan to make a change. Remember, you don't need to outrun this whole situation. You just need to outrun the guy behind you. Super important. Just have to suck less than everybody else. And I want to make sure that you do that. Now, I'm not saying lower your standards in life. I'm not saying you'll never eat steak again. What I am telling you is that in recessionary periods, you do need to operate differently. And we haven't been in one now in 12 years. Many of the people on this call probably weren't even in business then. Why don't you type in the chat box? That'd be interesting. Type in the chat box, yes or no. Yes, I was in the job place or in the work market, in the workforce during the 2008 recession, or no, I was not working in 2008. You might have been in school. You might have been living with mom and dad. You might have been in high school. Just type yes or no if you've seen this movie before. Okay, it's about 60-40. So 60% of you were in 2008 working, and 40% were not. Well, for the 40%, this next thing is crucial. But if you've forgotten, for the 60% that have forgotten, it's crucial too. You must know two things before you can even start to think about looking for your next job. You need to think about the cash burn rate for your company. And shame on you if you don't know it. Now, even if you're at a larger company that is profitable, you still should know the financial statements of your company. If, God forbid, you're at a smaller company that is unprofitable or close to profitable, even more important, you've got to know how much cash is in the bank. How much runway does your business have? If you've got 5 years of cash in the bank as a company and your CEO has told you we are not going to do layoffs this year, then I'm going to tell you, you may want to hold off on your job search. That's a pretty good place to be. If you're at a startup that has 2 months of cash in the bank, time to get going. You also need to know your cash burn rate for your household, your family. You can reduce, if you haven't by now, which I hope you have, I know I have, reduce any non-essential spending. What are you spending on HBO if you're not watching HBO? And what are you spending on all these 18 SaaS platforms that you haven't logged in months? Get going on reducing your cash burn rate for your household. The more you can trim it, the less desperate you're going to feel, the more you're going to sleep at night. And I need you sleeping at night. You can't look for a job. You can't be productive if you're up all night worrying. To do that, I would recommend planning on a 40% reduction in your company's revenue for the next 12 months. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but for the past, 3 weeks since I've been locked in, I've been doing a lot of reading, and the experts say that it is very conceivable in many industries, not all industries, but many, that we're going to see a 40% haircut in revenue for the next year. And if your business can still withstand that, you're probably in pretty good shape. If your business can't withstand that, you should be a little worried. Okay? You've got to get the reality of your situation. No more dreaming. Hope for the best. I hope for the best. I hope that we bend the curve. I hope that far fewer people perish than we are now expecting. I hope that the unemployment rate is not at 30%, but I'm not willing to bet on it. And I want to help you protect yourself and line up your next role if you need to. And that's not everyone on this call, by the way. Which goes to this question. I was asked this the other day. I've been doing a few webinars a week. I've got another one tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I'll tell you about later on a different topic. But I was asked, if I've got a job but I'm not happy, should I stay in the job? And my previous normal advice was, life is too short. If you got a shitty manager, shitty job, shitty company, shitty industry, get going. And you know what? Right now, if you're in a tolerable role with a solid company, and let's define solid as a balance sheet that can withstand this tsunami for at least 12 months, then I think you should strongly consider staying put. It pains me to say that. I am all about finding a path that makes us happy. I am all about aspirations. I've started 4 companies. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm all about hope and upside, but the reality is this is not the time for that. This is the time for reality to understand that if you're in a halfway decent situation at a company that's in decent shape, giving that up to see what's behind curtain number 2 is a pretty dangerous strategy. And the reason for that is as soon as the company starts to run into trouble, any company, you remember that scene in Titanic, right? Where everyone starts to jump into the lifeboats. There's not enough lifeboats for everybody. It's like musical chairs. And so people get their family and their friends and people they've worked with before and start to fill those seats, and you're the last one left standing. Don't be that guy. Okay. And I'm, again, painting reality, because even though this time does feel different because we also had the health crisis, having been through 3 recessions before, I can tell you this is the same thing that always happens. Sad but true. Now, I don't want you to settle. I want you to keep your aspirations high, but I also want you to be realistic. So I want you to think about what your target is, what your ideal target is. That takes thinking, and I'm going to walk you through how to do that step by step in a minute. But I also want you to be realistic. And it means having both of these in your mind at the same time. I know exactly what I want and why I want it. And at the same time, I'm going to be realistic. Until 20 days ago, and even now I fear, a lot of people still haven't got the message. They're just, I don't know what planet they're living on or what news they're reading, but they haven't got the message that something fundamental has changed, probably for the next 12 months, maybe more, but at least 12 months. So now let's talk about this exercise that I work with a ton of people on how to figure out what that next role should look like. Before I do that, type in the chat box if you're with me so far. Just type yes or no, and I'm going to grab a sip, and then we're going to keep going. Okay. I'm getting a lot of yeses, so I'm guessing you're with me. So let's keep rolling. When people ask me, what should I do next? I give them this very, very simple exercise. It's so simple, anyone can do it. And frankly, it shouldn't take you 3 weeks to do. This is something that by the end of day Friday should be done. Okay? The first box. What are you a rock star at? If you're in the top 5%, which is how I define rock star, and you are very honest with yourself about what you're a rock star at, you're setting yourself up for good stead. I'm not talking about that you're good at something or you're competent, but all of us have something that we're amazing at. It may be something that you haven't even used in a while. It may be something that you're not even sure why you're good at it. You just are. You always have been. Everyone tells you. And if you're not sure what that is, ask your former managers, ask your colleagues, ask your spouse, what are these things that I'm so good at? You may just have 1 or 2. It's not a laundry list. You can't be top 5% at many things. Number 2, what is it that you love the most? You may love doing certain things, certain activities. I love consulting with people, or I love dogs, or I love statistics, right? Number 3 question to ask yourself, which is the toughest one. How can I create value? What will people pay me to do? Right? What good is it if I'm top 5% at origami and I love doing origami? Who in this market is going to pay me to do origami? It's not going to happen. Your job by end of day Friday is to take this exercise and figure out what is at the intersection of that Venn diagram. And if you do that, you have your target, right? Don't overthink this. Speed is more important than perfection. I know people that will spend years on this exercise. And you know what? In a job market like last year, you could do that. Right now, 2 days is all you get to answer this question. Now, how can you create value? I'll give you a hint. The more you can position yourself and actually be a maker or a shaker, the better. What do I mean by maker or shaker? A maker is the person in a company or group of people that create the product or deliver the service. In other words, the business ceases to exist without this group of people, right? A lot of company, that group would be called operations. If it's AT&T, it's the phone installation guy. If it's a software development company, it's the person working on the software product that is shipping now. By the way, not the one shipping 2 years from now. Who knows if we'll ever get there. But the closer you can be to that point, the better off. Or be a shaker. And by that, I mean the person that sells it, the person that sells the product or service at your company. If you're not making the product or selling the product, you're at risk, and I don't want you at risk. So how do you position yourself? And I'll go through some examples in a few minutes on how to be close to the maker or the shaker. And that is your bullseye. Again, by End of Day Friday, I want you to nail this. What are you exceptional at? What do you love doing or love being around? And how can you create value? And if you're stuck, you'll send me a note and we'll find a way to figure it out. Okay? So I mentioned that I want you to have this aspiration. I want you to know what your target is. This is your target. I even used the Target store logo so that you know this is your target. At the same time, I want you to be realistic. And here's the cold hard truth. You need to know what your MVP is, your minimum viable position. 20 days ago, you were the buyer. I had clients that would lose candidate after candidate after candidate because these individuals had multiple offers at the same time. In 20 days, it has flipped. The pendulum has swung. And I can tell you that no matter how talented you are now the seller, not the buyer. The power is with the employer, not with you. So if you need to look for a job, and I've already talked about people, there's a whole bunch of people that should not be looking for a job right now. But if you're one of them, what you should be thinking about is your MVP. What is my lowest minimal viable position that I'm willing to take? And then I am going to tell you to take the first one that comes along and clears that bar. This is different advice than I would have given you 20 days ago. But the world has changed in 20 days. So what does that minimum viable position look like? First of all, it's with a company that is somewhat stable. It's in a sector that is either stable or growing. There are companies right now that are booming. Telehealth, telemedicine. I'll give you some examples in a few minutes. Okay. A company that has a balance sheet, a cash runway, that means you're not going to be looking for your next job again in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. This is what happened in 2001 in Silicon Valley when I lived there. People would go from one startup to the next startup to the next startup. And as soon as the startup ran out of cash, they went to the next one, and the next one. And man, that is not a good way to live, especially since I think this will be a prolonged period. Now, if I'm wrong, and I hope I am, then you can forget all this. But if you're inclined to believe that, then you need to understand what your MVP is. Something's got to give. It is highly unlikely that in this next move, this next career move, you're going to change industries and functions and cities, and you're going to get a 20% raise and a fancy title. Not going to happen. Something's got to give. You're either going to get a decent role, but it's going to be in a wrong company or sector, or vice versa, right? Nothing's going to be perfect. That's why being very honest with yourself. What am I willing to accept and tolerate for some period of time? I will tell you, this is not going to be your last job. It's not going to be your last employer. So redefine how you're thinking about this. But you don't want to be that last person when the music stops. Now, if you can find a role that has some growth opportunity, in other words, you're going to be learning in this situation, that would be ideal, because the market never ends for people who have a growth mindset and who are always learning new skills. Could be a new industry, new functional area, new challenges. We're all going to be learning a lot of new things over the past year. I've learned a lot over the past 20 days. I can tell you, I could probably write a book. So by growth opportunity, I don't mean a fancy title or you're going to be managing a bigger organization. All that shit goes out the window. What is important is finding a role where you can continue to grow. So at least you're not just killing time and making a few bucks. You're still advancing yourself. It's a little bit of go slow to go fast. The reason I feel comfortable giving you this recommendation of knowing your MVP and taking the first thing that clears that bar is because I've fast forwarded as a headhunter to a year from now or 3 years from now. And while you may be worried about your resume or your LinkedIn profile or how it's going to look then, which is what a lot of candidates often feel, I'm telling you, you are going to get a hall pass. What do I mean by hall pass? A hall pass means that anyone who's got a brain a year, 2, 3 from now is going to look at your background and understand that you did what you needed to do to continue to thrive, to continue to grow, to continue to provide for your family. You've grown accustomed to eating. We need food, and you're going to get a hall pass. You must believe that. In each recession that I've gone through, individuals, as long as they can explain their rationale, right? Why did you do what you did? You're going to get a hall pass. This is going to be the biggest hall pass of all time in your entire career, I hope. So type in the chat box if that makes sense. Yes or no? Yes, I get it. I get reality. I'm going to define my MVP and be okay with not finding the perfect position, not waiting 6 months and holding out because it's going to be too late. Or no, Jeff, you're full of shit. I'm not going to settle. I'm going to wait. I'm getting a lot of yeses. It pains me to say this to you. I don't love it, but I refuse not to take the reality that's right in front of us. Okay? Let's move on. Your safest bet in an economic period like this is to stay as low to the Maslow base of the pyramid as possible. If you don't know Maslow's triangle or Maslow's hierarchy, Google it, you'll understand. But basically it says that at the bottom, we start with our basics, right? Air, water, food. Is there a roof over our head? Then we go to safety. Are we safe? Do we have a job? Health, right? Healthcare. Then we go up to love and, dreaming and being all that we can be. And all the things will come back. Right now, we've all been plummeted to the bottom of the pyramid. So as you think about being a maker or a shaker, or as close to those two type of positions as possible, the next question is, what sector or industry is near the base of the pyramid? Because they don't go away. And then third is location. So I'm going to get to location in a minute. First, let's talk industry. These are industries that will thrive now. Don't worry about writing it down. I'll send you the list. There are industries that are booming right now, that are desperate for people. I have clients that are desperate for people. I also have clients that are laying off people. So this is a tale of two cities. It's crazy. But the world is not completely folding up its tent. Healthcare is a good example. Transportation, logistics. Walmart still has to get their stuff on time. There are industries that enable that feed that. Kids are playing more video games than ever. We have social networking booming like never before. Home repair. People aren't going to be buying new homes. They're going to be fixing the ones they got. The list is endless. Now, you need to work hard to find the companies in these sectors, but I can promise you they're there. Okay? A lot of people have questions. I'm going to ask you to save all the questions. I promise to get to them. Where? So we've talked about what kind of roles, maker and shaker. We've talked about what kind of industries, bottom of the pyramid. Where? My belief is, after interviewing people for the past 20 days, you should focus on two things. One, companies in your area. So if 21 days ago you wanted to move to Los Angeles, or you wanted to move out to the country, now is not the time for that move. That move goes on the back burner. You'll make the move. I'm not saying you'll never make the move, but right now, local companies. I say local companies because the real estate market is likely to shut down. So if you own a house, you're probably not going to be able to sell it. The logistical reality of interviewing in other markets, even when we can meet with people again, is going to be very difficult for a number of quarters. So local companies, as soon as the home quarantine is lifted and we can meet people again, I want you to be able to see them that next day. That's local companies. Second, equally good, are 100% virtual roles that continue to be virtual, continue to be remote. They always were, right? I led a 70-person company for 5 years, Retrofit. We were a 100% virtual company. So while COVID would have sucked, if it had happened during our growth period, it wouldn't have affected our hiring or recruiting or anything because that's how we worked. So these are the two categories. I wouldn't spend a moment thinking about other companies in other cities because the logistical challenges, if nothing else, are just too great. Again, I'm giving it to you straight. That's what you paid for. Well, you didn't pay, but if you had paid. Let's move on. How are we going to find this role? Normally, under normal circumstances, this picture would be inverted. You would think about what you wanted your next role to be, and then you would somehow try to activate your network to find that role. And what I'm encouraging you to do now is the opposite. Start with your network, the well that you have already dug. And God willing, I hope you've built a network over time. It's probably bigger than you think. And find a role somehow through that network. That is your best, fastest, safest, most likely outcome. Versus 21 days ago when you would have, relaxed and thought about your perfect job and your perfect role. And then you would have let everyone know and let me know if you hear about this. And you probably would have found it because we were at 3.5% unemployment. Last week, we had 3.5 million unemployed. This Friday, we're probably going to have the same. Okay, so the world has changed. Your strategy needs to change with it. So what do I mean by your network? Let's be really clear because I can guarantee you it is way bigger than you think. What I'd like to recommend you do in the next 48 hours is to make a list and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Who's on that list? Every manager that you have ever had. Whether you liked them or not, whether they liked you or not, they're on the list. Every mentor, which means someone that was not a peer, but maybe led another department or they gave you good advice, or maybe they were formerly your mentor, they go on the list. Managers of managers go on the list. So your boss's boss. Okay? Next, all your former peers. So think through every role in every company that you've worked in and add every peer. So if you were VP of marketing, you had your VP of sales, you had your VP of ops, you had your VP of finance. They all go on the list. Like them or not. Okay. All your former investors from all your previous companies, if they were venture capital backed, if they were private equity backed, if they were angel backed, maybe they were your uncle backed, your uncle goes in the list, all your former investors. Similarly, all your former board members. Shame on you if you don't know who they were. Track them down and find out who was the board member at the time that you were at a company. Now you're listing out every customer that you ever had any interaction with, even if they were a customer that fired you, even if they were a customer that you hated, they go on the list. Similarly, every vendor, every partner, every deal you signed, every software company that you engaged with, they go on the list. And then the big one. You probably are connected to so many LinkedIn contacts by this point, because if you're like many people, you click accept, 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 and you haven't even looked at them, and you're connected to them, which by the way means you have their email address. So you probably have the average LinkedIn member, I think, has 250 to 350 contacts. So you probably have at least that many. I've got 30,000. You probably have hundreds of thousands. They go on the list. Okay. So we've got a big network. And that's where I want you to start. Now I'm going to take a sip of water. Type in the chat box if you believe that you have a sizable network. Maybe you haven't thought about it before, or you haven't thought about it lately. But do you believe that you have a sizable network? Yes or no? A lot of yeses. A lot of yeses. That's great. Awesome. Yeah, a few people. I wish it was bigger, but you can't. It's too late to dig your well, right? We're going to deal with the cards that we've been dealt. And you need to work on it. That's great. But this is the time to use your network. You've built it all this time. I'm telling you, now is the time to use your network. So how do you use your network? In a strategic, methodical way. One person asked a great question, which was, does geography in the network matter? No. Even though you're going to look for local companies, if some of the people on this list are not in your city, I still want you to include them. Okay. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But I'll bet we're over 1,000 people. So what I want you to do over the next 2 days is put this into a Google sheet or Excel sheet. And it's super simple. Don't overthink this, please. Every name that we just came up with, it's probably 500, 1,000, 5,000 people. I want you to assign 3 scores for each person. I am OCD, aren't I? Boy, it's really showing right now. Does the person know who the heck I am? Meaning, if you called them, would they know who you were? So you may know them, but do they know you? So you may know that board member, but does that board member know who you are? Okay. Assign a score, 1, 2, or 3. Keep this simple. Number 2, do they love me? And I don't mean romantically, although that can't hurt either. Maybe you've had a lot of exes and they happen to be hiring managers. They might go on the list. But more importantly, do they love my work, my performance? Do I have reason to believe that they think highly of me? That's number 2. Okay. 1, 2, or 3. And then number 3, are they in some position to hire me or to refer me to other executives who might hire me? Are they senior? Do they run a company? Do they run a department, etc.? 1, 2, or 3. 3 means, oh my God, they're CEO of a 10,000 person company. 1 means, nope, he's a summer intern at that company. 2 is somewhere in between. Okay, don't overthink this. Assign a score 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're going to add them up at the end, sorted in descending order like I have, and you now have your instant handy dandy prioritized networking list. Okay, so you've gone from, oh my God, what am I going to do, to, wow, it's right here in front of me. I got a Google Doc or I have an Excel that tells me exactly who I'm focused on. I've sorted it tops down, and you're going to start your outreach, which we'll get to in a few minutes, tops down. Okay, now I want to do a time check. It is 5:43. I'm not in a rush. I want to make sure we get through this, and I really don't want to rush through this. But I can tell already we're going to go a little longer than 1 hour. I hope you'll stick around. We'll do Q&A. We'll have a lot of fun. Okay, so that is where you start. You start with your network. Now, after you tap out, we'll put on hold for a minute how we reach out to them. We're going to come back to that. But I don't want you to only tap out your network or only use your network, because there's other places. In particular, there are 30 places. Why 30? 30 is a manageable number of companies that you can actually get your arms around. What a lot of candidates and job seekers do is they say, well, I'm looking for a job. I'm going to go after everybody. I'm going to click apply, hundreds and hundreds of times. And they get nowhere because they haven't focused on anything. On the other hand, a few people will get their heart set on 1 or 2 companies. Those companies pass or have a hiring freeze, or God forbid they are laying off. 30 is a great number. What we're looking for are 30 companies, like I said before, that are either local in your town or are virtual-based companies, or at least these types of roles in those companies you have reason to believe are virtual. And they are in stable or growth sectors, as the ones that I gave a few examples ago. I also want you to think about, in those 30 companies, places where you have an unfair advantage. I don't mean illegally. What I mean is you have an inside track. You know something about their business, something about their industry, something about their customer base, where if they are going to hire someone, you have an unfair advantage over these other candidates. Maybe, as an example, a bunch of your former coworkers all moved over the course of a year to this other company. You didn't, but they did. That's an unfair advantage. You've got an inside track, assuming they know you. Even if they don't like you, they know you. Might be an inside track. So some good examples of this would be companies that maybe are customers of yours or were customers of yours, vendors, partners, anyone in that category. Once you've made that list of 30 companies, I'm going to highly recommend that you turn off CNN and turn off the bad news that is inevitably going to befall us over the next month. It's going to happen whether you're watching CNN 24/7 or not. And instead, research these 30 companies inside and out. I want you to know them better than any other candidate that they could possibly talk to. It's going to make the difference, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So we've got your network tops down. We've got these 30 target companies, okay? Now we need to actually find the role. It's very difficult right now to convince a company to create a new role. Not going to happen unless you are God's gift to rainmakers. So it's probably a company that has identified a need and has decided to fill it right now, despite what seems like Armageddon. One of the best ways to do this is by tracking new job openings, which you can do through LinkedIn and Indeed and a million other websites. I don't even need to list them, or send me an email. I'll send you a list. And most of them have daily email job alerts where it will email you each day new positions, companies that are hiring, and the actual job. You'll go through them each day, weed out the ones that just don't make sense, right? They're just out of left field, and track all the others, again, in a separate Google Sheets or Excel. But here's the thing, and this is where a lot of job seekers make a mistake. Under no circumstances, ever should you apply for the job online. Don't ever click that apply button. And there are a million reasons, most of which I'm not going to bore you with, but one of the biggest is no one ever looks at those applications. And if they do, it is usually so late in the process that if you can end run that process, you have a huge advantage. So many companies are legally required to post jobs online for non-discrimination reasons. Many companies just do it because their website tracks it all. So you're going to get this information, but you're going to then play detective and identify the hiring manager, which isn't that hard to do these days. It's actually not that hard to do. It takes some detective work. It maybe takes a few phone calls, takes being a little crafty and creative. But if you want to do it, you can do it. And you identify the hiring manager who has the pain. You're not going to talk to HR, and I love HR people, but that's not who we're going after. We're going after the guy or gal who has the pain and needs to fill this role as soon as possible. Once you've identified that person and you add it to your Google Sheets or your Excel, the next step is to get their email address, their work email address, which is actually super easy. There are 7 tools that I use. They cost almost nothing. If you don't know what they are, send me an email and I'll send them to you. Okay. But you're going to get their email address. So again, this is sales. This is exactly the same recommendations and advice I would give to a great up and coming salesperson who's trying to build their pipeline. You're building your pipeline, you're building your funnel, but I want you to do it faster than everybody else out there. When everyone else wakes up and realizes, oh shit, I got to get going, you are already halfway down the track, which is why we're going to get this going by Friday. Type in the chat box, yes, if you're with me. So I know I haven't lost you. Just type yes, no if you're not with me. Okay. And again, any of these things that you need help with, I'm going to give you my email address when we're done and I'll send them to you. Good. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Okay. Let's keep going. How are we going to contact these people? Again, you're going to do this differently than everybody else out there. If you value the 25 years as a headhunter and 4 times as CEO that I've seen this work as the hiring manager, you're going to do it this way, different than most everybody else. Number 1, you're not going to send 1 email to that person. You're going to send 4. Send them every other day at different times of day. I cannot tell you how often it is that the 4th email you send is the one that you get the reply to. Most great marketers know that, and right now you are a marketer of you. 4 emails. I would recommend that you send them evenings and weekends when the person's inbox is not full. Right now, Everyone's email boxes are at capacity because we're all working on email all the time. So think about it from their perspective. You're far more likely to get a response if you land at the top of the inbox when not everyone else is emailing them. So think about sending those 4 emails on evenings and weekends. In the email, under no circumstances should you include your resume, especially as an attachment. Why is that? They don't want to see your resume. They don't know you, or maybe they don't know you. Maybe they don't know why you're contacting them. Everyone's worried about viruses. At many companies, by the way, just by having an unsolicited attached document, you're going right to the spam folder and you won't even know that you didn't get through. However, always include a link to your LinkedIn profile. And we're going to talk about LinkedIn profile in a few minutes. Don't even get me started on LinkedIn profile, but it is important to include the link to that LinkedIn profile, not your resume attachment. This email that you're going to send is super short. It is shorter than any other person's email. It is so short that it gets noticed just for being short. It's going to be uncomfortably short. It's probably 4 or 5 sentences. So it is not a cover letter. It is not a paragraph. It is not a bunch of prose. It is 4 or 5 sentences. If you subscribe to my daily email, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is short and pithy and punchy and human. And I don't care if you're not a copywriter, you're going to become a copywriter. It's 4 or 5 sentences. And you're focused on what their number one problem is. You don't just say, I'm interested in your product manager position. I'd like to apply, and here's my attached resume. That's what everyone else is doing. You're going to say, hi, Sally. I know you run product management at blah. This healthcare crisis creates a huge opportunity for you if you're staying close to your customers. I read that you're launching this product because I'm doing all this research. I know exactly how to do that. I'd love to talk to you. Here's my LinkedIn profile. That's it. It's 4 or 5 sentences. Okay? You're not giving them an objection. You're not giving them a reason. You're just giving them a bit of a reason to talk to you because they want to hear more. Don't talk about your aspirations, your goals, your career dreams. No one cares, especially right now. It's 100% focused on them. Okay? You're a marketer. More on how to contact them. Your subject line is the number one thing. As an email marketer, you should know that if the email isn't opened, it doesn't matter. So you should be sweating and practicing and brainstorming. I don't care if you have to have a bottle of wine to brainstorm subject lines that are going to get opened. They should be impactful, personalized. It should not say interested in a job, application. It should be something that gets noticed. I'm the product manager you've always wanted. I've cracked the code on how to launch your next product. I've led turnarounds in recessions, and I can do it for you too. Something that makes them say, I want to learn more about that. And they open that email. You're halfway home. Most emails don't even get read. They don't even get opened, especially if they have that little paperclip attachment next to them. What is your call to action? Every email, every contact needs a call to action. Your call to action, your request, is a 15-minute video call. I've been working with a number of individuals who have been using this over the past 20 days, and it's working beautifully. Why? 15 minutes is a unintrusive, unscary amount of time. 30 minutes or 60 minutes, or God forbid, open-ended, is very scary. Number 2, a video call is your best way. Even if you're introverted, unattractive, and mousy, it is better than a phone call because you can have some level of engagement, some type of engagement. Look, let me show you. Look, I'm introverted, mousy, and unattractive, and now we have some kind of engagement, right? But on the phone, much, much harder to do. You just can't do it. So I want you to think about video call and consider proposing that 15-minute video call on an evening or weekend, right? Right now, they are super busy. They are in wartime situation, which is my webinar tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, right? Wartime management. Sign up if you want to come. So they're busy all day, not to mention babysitting their kids and all that stuff, right? Propose an evening or a weekend. Whenever they want to have the call, you will have the call. Okay. Now, when you get the yes and they say, yeah, I'll do a 15-minute call with you. Unlike most individuals, I highly recommend that you prepare like you are studying for the SAT. 99% of people will not do that. They will either go into the call cold, they will search Google 10 minutes before the call, or they will wing it. If you prepare for that call, 5 to 10 hours, which I know sounds insane, but what else do you got to do these days, right? You're going to knock their socks off. I want you to know that company better than the hiring manager herself. She should hear, even if it's an industry you've never worked in, you study, and there's no excuse anymore, guys, right? On Google, you're studying the industry, the balance sheet, the company's financials, their competitors, their news, their management team, their new products, their pricing strategy. You're going to study their competitors. In 5 to 10 hours, you can come up to speed so fast if you have half a brain that in a 15-minute conversation, they can say, holy shit, this person can add immediate value. And that is the key. In an economic recession like this, in turmoil, that hiring manager is thinking, how fast is it going to take this person to ramp up? I need help and I need it now. I need it tomorrow. I don't need it 3 months from now when they learn my industry or learn my company. So rather than tell them that you can do that, show them. Now that means you're going to maybe waste 5 to 10 hours, which goes back to my original point. You can only do this for a few companies, 30 companies, a manageable list of companies. And as soon as they say no, you cross them off the list and you add another company. But you need to draw the connections, make it super clear that in 15 minutes, I can hit the ground running and I can do X, Y, Z. And you can do that in video. Totally doable. Type in the chat box if that's making sense. And then we're going to keep going. We're rounding third right now. We're in the home stretch. I know we're going to be a few minutes over an hour, but type in the chat box if this is useful. And if you want to see this last bit, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and we'll go as long as you want. I know a lot of this sounds obvious, but this is the exact opposite of what most people do. And you're really going to differentiate yourself. Okay. Now, after that conversation, before, if you have to, if they say, send me a resume before the video, you have to send a resume. But don't offer it. Do not offer it. Let them use the LinkedIn profile that you sent. You already got the call. So all you can do by sending the resume unsolicited is screw things up. Let them look at the LinkedIn profile, be impressed, and say, yep, I'll take a call. Okay. After that call, you are going to blow their socks off by taking your resume or LinkedIn profile and creating what I call a mirror version of the resume. Invest 30 minutes, shouldn't take more than that, to make that resume sing that it matches exactly what you just heard in the 15-minute conversation with this hiring manager and the 5 or 10 hours that you researched. In other words, remove anything extraneous, add anything that ties to that company. I don't mean just fill it with acronyms and jargon from the industry. It's not what I mean. What I mean is show them how you can create value and hit the ground running. Send them again with that resume, a 5-sentence email. Loved our conversation. Your business is fascinating. I know exactly what needs to be done. I can do it. I've done it before. Attached is my resume, which details that. They're going to look at it and say, holy cow, this resume exactly mirrors the job description that I have. And that's because you specifically did that. Now, one person asked, how long should your resume be? Never more than 2 pages in this environment. And if you are under the age of 30, should be 1 page. So basically, if you're under 30, 1 page. If you're over 30, still 1 page, unless you've just had a lot of roles in a lot of companies and some great experience than 2 pages, but the shorter the better. The goal of the meeting is of the resume is just for them to say, wow, she totally matches the job. Okay, but we're not sending this before that video interview. Now, the video interview itself, a few things to think about. You may not have interviewed via video before. I guarantee your next interview is going to be on video. So there's a few things you got to think about. First of all, check your technology. Don't arrive at 2 o'clock for a 2 o'clock interview. You get on 10 minutes early. You make sure the link is working. You need to reboot your computer, whatever you got to do. You tell your kids, your family, your wife, your dog, your husband, whatever, to free up all the bandwidth, stop watching Netflix so that you can use it and it not be jumpy, okay? Engaging with them means looking at the camera. I'm looking at you. Don't look at your screen. Don't look at some other screen where their image is. Reposition the windows, just as I have right now, to have their picture right under the camera. So I'm looking at the camera. Also, print out and have your notes, your resume, your notes, your questions, whatever. I don't care if you print them out and tape them up right on the screen next to the camera. Okay, but eye contact is everything. Having energy, using your hands, using motion. You have to find a way to come through that camera. Obviously, think about what to wear. You're not going to wear a suit from home. You'll look ridiculous. And you're not going to wear a torn t-shirt as my 2 o'clock interview today had on, which is also ridiculous. I strongly encourage you to do a mock interview with someone that you trust. Don't let your real interview be your first video interview. Not a good idea. I do mock interviews for people. If you want, let me know. Your best friend, your boss, whoever you trust, okay? Do a mock interview so you can see how you look. Get them to record it, especially on Zoom, so you can see how you come across. Okay, we're almost done. There's a couple of things you want to have ready at all times. The first is what I call your SAR. SAR. For every job, every position you've ever held, you should have your SAR, which is your situation, your actions, and your results. The situation is the situation you stepped into. It might have been a turnaround. It might have been a new launch. It might have been a raw startup. But here's what I stepped into. Here's what I inherited. Here are the key actions I took. And I don't mean a laundry list of 30. I mean the 2 or 3 key things that I did. And here were the results. Even if it failed miserably, know your numbers. Quantified. I grew revenue by 37%. I slashed costs by 32% by doing these 2 things. SAR, SAR, SAR. In the interview, even if you're not asked this, this is how you answer the questions. Okay? That's how you do it. Also have your references ready to go. Don't wait to be asked. Don't wait till the last second to pull them together. Make it super easy. And by references, I mean the name, the title, their email, their mobile number. Have it all ready to go. Don't forget that your resume, when you send it, or your LinkedIn profile, is in a stack like this. This is what it looks like, especially right now. You have to have a story crafted to differentiate you. Think of a grocery store. Other than toilet paper, you're probably buying a lot of things in the grocery store right now, and everything starts to look the same. You got 70,000 products in a typical grocery store. Yours has to jump off the shelf. And unfortunately, your LinkedIn profile only gets a 6-second look. A 6-second look. That's what the data says. So a couple things to think about with your LinkedIn profile, which is crucial to your search, is to include quantifiable metrics. I want to know what you achieved. I don't want a description of the job. If you were a product manager, if you were a director of sales, if you were a CFO, I know what you did. I know what that job is. What I want to know is your achievements, your accomplishments. How does someone know you were there? That's what the hiring manager wants to know. How did you create value? Now, there's a lot of things you can do with the 2 photos. You may not even know that there's 2 photos. There's your headshot, and then there's the big photo at the top. I've learned a lot about what works well with those. But here's probably the most important thing. Everyone's LinkedIn profile gets unspoken objections. As a headhunter who's interviewed 30,000 people, when I look at a LinkedIn profile for 6 seconds and decide if I want to keep investing my time, I come up with unspoken objections. I haven't spoken them out of my mouth and I haven't asked the candidate, but I have some objections. I have some concerns. I have some yellow flags, whatever you want to call them. Every hiring manager does too. If you can proactively figure out what are those unspoken objections and address them before they even have a chance to become big problems, you've already halfway to making the sale. Same as if you're a sales rep. If I can proactively address your concerns and your objections, there's really no reason to say no, right? Your LinkedIn profile has to do that. And it has to do this and tell this story in 6 seconds, which is pretty crazy. Look, right now, everyone is very nervous. I understand that. A lot of your peers, a lot of other individuals, even a lot of executives are paralyzed. They're focused on CNN. They're watching the bad news all day, every day, instead of taking control and developing a plan and executing that plan. And if you do that, I assure you it's going to work because you're going to be 10 steps ahead of everyone else. When they realize this 20 days from now or 2 months from now, and those dominoes are still tipping over, you're going to have a huge head start. And that's why I wanted to have this webinar. So let me summarize a couple things, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Basically, there's 3 categories that I think about. First of all, there's people that are currently working. If you're currently working and you can stay in that role, if at all possible, if your company can be a port in the storm, that's the place to be. You should also be digging your well before you're thirsty, right? I hope you learned that lesson. You should also be generous, make introductions, help people. I don't just mean financially, but if your company's hiring, reach out to your network. This is the time to help others if you can. If you're in a company and you're nervous, create your plan and take action now. If you're not working, define that minimum viable position and take the very first one that clears that bar. In the meantime, I would recommend you take on some project work. It'll lengthen your runway. It'll reduce your stress if you have a couple $1,000 or $5,000 a month coming in from some project work. Okay. It helps to have an advisor, right? The Godfather had a consigliere. I've created a product that might be helpful for you. It's called LinkedIn Makeover. I'll tell you briefly how it works, and then we'll open up for questions. You'll get a live one-on-one video with me, so just you and me, okay? Not these other hundreds and hundreds of people, just the 2 of us. It's a live video. I don't have a team that you're going to meet with. You're going to meet with me, and you're going to get a video recording of our session. And in that session, we're going to nail your LinkedIn profile. I want to give you the confidence so that you know that this piece of the job search is going to work. And I'll help you make it discoverable so that when headhunters or when executives or HR people are looking, that your profile will come up. There's a lot of important ways to do that. But most importantly, address those unspoken objections. I can actually tell you what the unspoken objections are going to be, and I can help you craft that story in 6 seconds to make sure you get the meeting. So that's what LinkedIn Makeover is. What I will not let you do and spend our time doing is wallowing, right? We're going to have a 30-minute hard-hitting session on video. We can do it evenings and weekends if you want. Whenever you have time, I'll work around your schedule, but I will not let you wallow or complain. Those are the people that drive me insane. I just can't deal with them, right? It's $250. So I've priced it in a way that kind of takes the objection off the table. If you think this can be useful, I assure you it's worth $250 for a half hour to do this. You'll also get the recording, and I'll throw in a month of my personal email address. So any questions you have for a month, you want to follow up with me, you send me email, and I will put it at the top of the list. That automatically comes up in red in my email, and you get the first answer. So it's called LinkedIn Makeover. If you want to do it, you go to recruitrockstars.com/job. It's first come, first served. We have hundreds of people on this webinar. I've already got some scheduled for tomorrow and Friday and early next week, but I'll do as many as I can. I'll try to do some on the weekend too. So go to recruitrockstars.com/job, and you can get your LinkedIn makeover, and we'll get it super tight, and I'll help you tell your story. So with all that, I know we're 10 minutes over. I promise to stay and answer questions. let's have them. Type in the chat box. I know there was a bunch as we went, but if you could maybe re-ask those, that would be great. And we'll get to it. I also want to mention tomorrow night, same time, same bat channel, 5 o'clock. We're going to do a totally different topic: wartime leadership, how to lead your team through change. Okay, first question. How does your job search change for senior level roles? It does not change. There is nothing in what I was said over the past 70 minutes that I would do differently for a VP of sales that I would do for a junior inside sales rep. You got to find out who the hiring manager is. You need to sell that story, ask for the 15-minute video interview, prepare for that video interview, nail that video interview, follow up on the video interview with your mirror resume. None of this advice changes. Next question. How far out are you booking LinkedIn makeovers? I'm already days and days booked out, and it's getting worse and worse. So if you want to do it, I would strongly suggest you sign up now. Are you going to send me a presentation for my wife? Yes, I'll send you the deck of everything we went through. Is it possible to position yourself as both a mover and a shaker if you think you're both and can back it up? Or do you recommend picking one? It's a great question, Michael. I've met very few people in my life who are gifted at both being a maker and a shaker. If you're one of those people, God bless you. The challenge is telling the story, because people are so skeptical that you can do both equally good. Like, I would be skeptical, but if you can tell that story, great. Otherwise, I would pick one and go with it. And I'd probably pick sales, right? Right now, companies need sales. They need revenue. They're dying for revenue. And if you can convince them that you can bring in revenue and save the day, they will talk to you. Next question from Ron. If the contact is a warm referral, what do you think of subject line, referred to you by name, or name suggested I reach out? That's fantastic. I think you can do a little bit better and make it a little bit more creative, but referred to you by John Thompson is great. But why not John Thompson begged me to meet you, or John Thompson thinks I'm your next product manager? I mean, be creative. Do you recommend unemployment benefits? Yes. If you're unemployed, you're crazy not to sign up for unemployment benefits. If you can get through, you should absolutely be doing. If my LinkedIn profile is crap, should I update it before the session with you? Sure. Take a stab at it based on the few things we've talked about, but don't invest a ton of time, because I'm probably going to tear it apart. We're going to do 30 minutes. I am brutally honest, and we're going to completely make it over, but you might as well take a first shot so we can maximize that time. Is it okay to reach out to a company I left 2 years ago? Absolutely. Some of the best hires I've ever made are boomerang hires. That's someone that leaves and comes back. Here's the psychology. And this was from Thomas. For the company to be able to tell its people that Thomas left and came back because this is such a great place to work, not only feeds their ego, but it tells their other employees that the grass is not greener and they should stay. So boomerang hires are phenomenal. Now, you need to think about and be very clear and consistent with your messaging around why you left the company. Presumably you told them something. If you now come back and tell them something else, they're going to think you're full of shit. So you got to think that through. But yes, do some hiring managers find a video call more intrusive than a phone call? Yes, they do. But you are the salesperson. They're the buyer. It's not like it was 20 days ago. So your ask as the salesperson is a 15-minute low-key video call, evenings, weekends, Tom, whenever you can do it. If Tom says, I'd love to talk to you, but let's start with the phone, of course, have the phone call, right? Start there. Don't say, no, if you're not willing to do a video, I won't talk to you. That's not what I'm recommending. But I think you're going to find that most people are open to videos these days. It's clearly the way of the world. Okay. You mentioned if you're not working, it's best to find some project work to lengthen the runway. What have you found is the best way to do project work? It is almost no different from what we just went through, Anthony. It's very similar. you're looking for companies that are looking for project people, there are other websites, LinkedIn. You can search for contract roles, project roles. There's Upwork, all kinds of places. Never apply online. We talked about that. But you can certainly do that. Also, if you were just laid off, go to your current employer or your former employer and say, there's probably a lot of work that has to get done. I know you can't pay me this rate. I know you can't continue to employ me, but I can do project work. Go to your last employer. It's really no different. My previous manager was the reason I left that company. Is it odd not to include him as a reference? That's from Liz. I wouldn't say it's odd. It's just suboptimal. So look, we all have worked for people that we don't love. I get that. If at all possible, include them. Even if that means you have to call them, have a heart-to-heart, apologize, suck it up, be the bigger person, whatever. If you can do that, to include them as a reference, that would be great. If you don't include them, it's not the end of the world. What is the end of the world is if most of your managers are not on that list. So if you've worked for 7 managers and 6 of them are listed, I can get past 1. As long as you understand that I'm probably going to do backdoor references and I'm going to track her down anyway and call her and find out what happened. So just know that backdoor references, which are completely legal, completely ethical, chapter 7 of my book, if you haven't read it, backdoor references, and take your chances. Next question is from Eva or Iva. How do you change from ad agency position to a client side position in the same marketing function? I found clients highly hesitant to hire agency people. Many clients in marketing are hesitant to hire agency people. There's a lot of reasons, and that's the unspoken objection that I'm talking about. Your LinkedIn profile somehow needs to convey that you are not the typical ad agency person and that you belong on the client side. Now, I'm not going to get into a coaching session right here, but that is your job. Now, there's going to be some people that will never believe it and you can't get past it. And there will be just a few that believe it. Now, I can tell you that your best bet is to start with employers and clients in the same sector as you've worked. That's obviously where you're going to add the most value. Next question from Brooke. I thought it was illegal in California for a former employer to badmouth you to a prospective employer. It's not illegal in California. It's stupid, and most employers won't badmouth you. But if they're willing to speak, they don't need to badmouth you for the prospective employer to know that it's not a great reference. Right? If I ask a question of a reference, again, chapter 7 has the questions I'm going to ask, and I can judge by the answers if they're a huge fan or not a fan. They don't need to badmouth you. But no, it's not illegal, and very few lawsuits ever result from those type of situations. I'm happy to stay on for 10 more minutes if you guys want. If you have any other questions, I want to make sure I answer all your questions. If you haven't already, sign up for your slot. Go to recruitrockstars.com/job, and we'll get a session booked over the next, few days, and we'll get your LinkedIn profile where it needs to be. Are there any other questions before we wrap up, call it a night, and let you go get a glass of wine and spend some time with your family? Because I know you haven't been spending enough time with your family. Okay, then it's a wrap. So, invitation tomorrow night, 5:00 Central. Oh, there's another question. One more question just came in. My 2019 bonus is in jeopardy and will not be paid any time. Should I continue working knowing I may never receive it? I think you can assume that, look, I don't know your personal situation. Most bonuses are out the window. And you can talk to your manager and ask, but I've talked to a few dozen CEOs the past 20 days. The last thing they are thinking about is paying bonuses. So if you think you're getting a bonus, I would really make sure you're going to be getting that bonus, because I'd be kind of surprised. Okay, a couple more questions. Having changed industry 13 years ago and having worked independently since then, this situation has pushed me to shut down and prepare to go back to work for someone else and change industries. What can you recommend? I can recommend that you get a lot of luck, because that's a lot of change right now. you have to hold something constant. Either hold your industry constant or maybe continue to be independent but migrate to a different sector that needs that help. So I know you've been working in tourism according to this question. Find other industries that are not tourism but have a lot in common with tourism, or they are industries that feed the tourism industry. You're going to see a ton of accounting and finance issues and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff related to the tourism industry. But I wouldn't try to change everything at once. You got to hold something constant. As it is now illegal to ask someone what they make, hiring manager, have you switched to asking, what are you looking to make? How do you suggest the answer? It's a great question from Ron. First of all, it's not illegal to ask that question, except in 8 states or cities in the US. So make sure you're one of them. Despite that, people are probably still going to ask you because a lot of hiring managers don't know it's illegal. If you get asked that question, don't say, you can't ask me that, it's illegal. You'll sound awkward. That said, my normal answer to that question 20 days ago was never answer that question of how much you make. Now, because time is of the essence and I don't want you to dick around, I would answer the question, but I would answer it this way. Ron, I would say to the hiring manager, great question. I take compensation very seriously, but it's only one of my considerations because I'm also all about learning and growing and developing new skills. But over the past 3 years, my compensation has ranged from X to Y. X is the lowest you would even consider accepting. It's that MVP that we talked about. Y is honestly the highest amount of money you've made over the past 3 years. It's often double X in my experience, and it includes every dollar that company paid you, even healthcare benefits and any other kind of value. So you're giving them a range you've answered the question, but you're kind of giving them a range that's so useless that you could drive a truck through it. That is how I would answer the question. Normally, before 3 weeks ago, I would have said, don't answer the question, but now you are the seller, not the buyer. You need to name your price. And if you aren't willing to name your price, they're going to get frustrated and move on. Okay, next question. Oh, that was just a comment. Okay, a lot of thanks. My pleasure. We're going to wrap up. Sign up for the session. I'm happy to work with you. We'll spend a half hour. We'll record it just like this. We'll focus on your LinkedIn profile. We'll get it where it needs to be. You can use the rest of the half hour on anything you want to talk about. And I'll give you my personal email address for 30 days. You can ask me anything you want for 30 days on your job search. So great to spend time with you. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern, we're doing a live session, totally different topic. It is on wartime leadership, how to lead your team through this period of uncertainty. If you're thinking about laying off people on your team, if you're thinking about making cuts, if you're not sure about your style, your communication, that's what tomorrow is all about. It is a different login. So if you're interested, just send me an email. I promise I give you my email, and I'm going to do that now. It's jeff@recruitrockstars.com, jeff@recruitrockstars.com. And more than happy to send you the invite for tomorrow night. Okay? Great to spend time with you, and have a good evening.